Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday, and it is September the 23rd, and this will be our chart lesson for the day. And it turned out to be a really nice downtrend, and accelerated once we had the break here into the afternoon. It accelerated on down even further. So, I mean, we've been trending down. We've fallen off quite a bit here. So we're probably, I can't remember what the highs were. Maybe we're 200 or 300 points off the highs. Feels like we ought to be much further than that, but maybe we're not because we're still at 32 something, or yeah, 32.30 here. So maybe we're not down as much as I thought we were, but feels like we're down substantially. But this was another pretty good downtrend day. It looked like it might be a range day early on when we couldn't get below this low. Look how prices really struggled to push through there. We actually had a failed breakout a couple of times, but then once this trend line held again, it was off to the races. We finally even got a break here, and this was pretty early in the day, just right around lunchtime. But from that point on, the bottom fell out. So this turned out to be a pretty good downtrend day, but you'll notice as we go through the trades, there's not a lot of them. There's not a lot of good entries here, and especially around the key entry points. So, but we'll go through each of the trades and we'll talk about them and we'll wrap up. I'm doing this a little earlier today. I'm gonna probably upload it a little bit earlier. I've got a birthday party to go to this evening, so I'm trying to get out of here a little bit early today. So I'll probably move through these pretty quickly. There's not a lot, like I said, there's not a lot of trades. There's probably a lot to talk about, but we'll try to, since there's not a lot of trades, it shouldn't take as long as usual. But I'm going to get to it. So let's back out here and we'll start with trade number one. The good thing is that there were a few trades here you probably could have been done early on. Well, I say early, but if you'd have caught one or two of these right in here, you probably would have had a runner on them. And you might have even got a runner right out of the gate this morning, depending on how you traded. This was a really nice move right here. I actually had a trader send me a trade example here, and he just missed his runner by a tick or two, and then it took on off and dropped on down. So he just missed that. I'll try to upload that trade example because it was really a good trade. It's just a shame he didn't catch his runner on that one, but you know, that's the way it goes sometimes. And really the whole idea behind the scalp and run, the reason we scalp out is to take the trade to zero risk as soon as you can. So you don't necessarily have to move to break even or break even plus one. You could move the whole trade to break even, meaning if you scalped out with one contract here, you got 4 ticks of profit. So maybe from wherever you entered, you keep your stop at 4 ticks back from that point. And if just assuming this trader would have done that with his example this morning, he would have had an easy runner here. Of course, if you had a loser, he gives back everything. So there's pros and cons to both of them. But if you're trying to get more swing trades or more runners, you probably want to give yourself a little more room rather than break even or break even plus one. That's just the way I like to do it. I don't like to see prices break. I hate to see a point or two profit and then watch it back up and take it all away. And that was that's what led me to this strategy to begin with. Was almost every time I'd take a trade, I'd be in the green, and sometimes by a couple of 3 points, and then suddenly I'd try to get a little more out of it. The next thing you know, I had a losing trade or I gave it all back. And when it'd come back, I'd get nervous and didn't want to have a loser, so I'd exit at break even or whatever and get nothing out of it. And I started thinking, if I just take my money every time, if I'd been doing that all along, I'd be way up instead of where I'm at right now. And so I started taking my profit, and the next thing you know, I'm making money. And so that's what really led to this strategy, just trial and error of getting tired of watching prices back up and take my money again. So just keep that in mind. I didn't mean to get off on that tangent, but that's an important one. So But anyway, prices are coming down here. We're really in what looks like a little uptrend. Um, but you can still see prices swinging back and forth both ways. So you can trade this one both ways. And right here, we're coming down. 7 o'clock came right in here as we're going sideways. And we get our first break of this little channel. So you would expect prices to make a retest and probably come down here before bouncing. And so we're just waiting on prices to come back here. And you get the break and you get a chance to go short here. And this is a second entry short too. Notice your new low, first entry, second entry. So it's a second entry short, first break of the trend line. You got plenty of room to get out and you're expecting prices to come to at least here. That one trade might be all you need today if you catch a runner with it. We bounced here, and unfortunately you just don't get a real good chance to go long. There is a higher low right here that's very, very tempting. But look at this congestion. This is congestion, and you can see we're really working sideways. It was kind of hard to know exactly where the lows were at that point, but we're looking at a long here, not a short, so you just don't really know what to do here. If you'd have went long, I'm not sure if that trade, let's just see, that trade might have still worked, but I just don't think it was a safe trade. Your entry would have been 08, is that right? 08.75, and it went to 09.75. So you see it would have been a 4-tick failure. You would have got right to 4 ticks and bounced off your order and doubt, and maybe you get filled, but most of the time you won't on a limit order. And then it backs up, and it would have stopped you out before it went higher. You would have got out this time up, but you would have got stopped out down here 1 tick below the signal bar. So it's just not a real good entry. So I was waiting on a reversal pattern which comes, but we're still inside this little trading range, so you don't want to take that one either, and you can see it would have been a trap. And we're stuck in this, so just don't try to enter this unless you get something with the trend way down here at the low. This one's real tempting, but you better wait on a higher low. It would have worked, but you're better off to wait on the higher low, which comes here, and you notice that was a quick, easy trade. And where do we go? We go right back up to the top, and we just bouncing along again. And finally, we turn down over here. There's a failed breakout here, and we're way outside this trend line. Let me extend this trend line on some here. And you can see we came back and tested that trend line a few times from underneath. But you just don't get a setup to go short. It's a shame because this is a nice move down. But it does set your trend line. Draw your trend line there and see what you get. And earlier I had this a little bit higher, bouncing off here, but you can see it fits better down here if you wait till you get to the lows. So, and we just drop on down, and I don't see one trade here that I really like. There's a hidden second entry here, but not a very good signal bar either. So this is too congestive here. So we're working on down, and again, very congestive, very congestive. It turns out this is just a little trading range with 2 tiers in it here. And you're just looking for a lower high for a chance to get short up here, and you don't get that either. We're just in congestion, and so you don't really get a good setup. And again, it drops on down. I marked this because early on, let me back out here and explain this trade, because normally you probably wouldn't be looking for a long here. But you can see this support across here, and we had a little break, and then we've dropped down here, and we haven't come back to test that at all. We're way away from the EMA. So there's a chance this is still a range day at this point. So you may take this trade. I marked it green because it is aggressive, but you can almost count on any time your prices are going to at least come back to test that the EMA, and at least test the breakout point and probably the EMA. But since the EMA is inside that breakout point, prices may not get that far, but there's still plenty of room back to that lower side of this channel, this trading range across here. And so that's what you're playing there. And then of course you get your reversal here, and that looks like a true reversal pattern. And notice we're back inside the range. That's that blue line going sideways here. Maybe I should just make that a little bigger just so it's easier to see here. make it just a little wider, and that just makes it a little easier to see. And you can see we're back inside. We even come back and test it again here, but you're right back in the middle, and there's a higher low here, which is the one you'd rather take, but by the time it triggers, you're all the way back up here near the high. And I just don't think it's worth it. And there's a short here too, and you could consider this a lower, smaller short, and it broke higher and turned down, but you got to go short right into the EMA, right into the midline, which is not necessarily a problem when the overall bias is somewhat down, and the fact that we're also going sideways here. You can't worry too much about that. So you might have taken that one, but we're just not quite back to the trend line. And I'm just afraid that, hey, it breaks a tick lower, or this just quits and it comes back up again at the midline. So that's one that you could argue that could be green. We'll change that one. It's a really tempting trade, and it looks pretty good, and it works out great. I mean, this turns out to be a real nice move, but you just don't know that. And then, of course, we break lower and turn back up again. But notice what happens on the way back up. There's a higher low here, and this is a reversal pattern too, but that's congestion below the EMA. I'd wait. It would have worked, but you see we end up going lower here, and by waiting, if you're long here, you're more apt to miss your short because it's hard to reverse real quick. Of course, you get a little time here, but notice what happens when we hit this trend line again. This confirms it, and its prices just can't even get through it. They can't even close at it, much less close through it. They push through it a few times, but unfortunately, you can't go short there. You get a little failed breakout, and then you might look at this as a lower high. That one's tempting, but I'd wait on a lower high. And it comes right here. This breaks a tick higher, then turns down. That's where I would go short. And then you get your true reversal here. It doesn't quite get back to the EMA, but that's a pretty good move. You can tell that's only one leg down, so you're probably going to get another leg down. And so I like entering on either one of those or both of them if you're flat by the time of the reversal. And that would be your measured move right there. We missed it by a tick or two. But we end up coming on back down again. But either one of those would have been good trades. And then we come back and you actually go short here, and but we don't break higher, and there's no good signal bar here. You do get a lower high right here. This actually breaks higher. It pushes through the midline, pulls back, tries to test it. It can't get through because of the trend line. And then it just turns down again. And you would be expecting prices to come back down here. So I like that trade. It's close to being green, but you can tell we're in this downtrend now, and this channel seems to be in play now, and when prices are moving on lower again. And I would also measure this leg. This whole thing is one leg. And then look for that over here, and you can see we pretty much got a perfect measure move. It might have went a tick or two further. And then we bounce. You get a higher low here. Don't go long right there. I mean, I don't think I would want to go long here at all, even with a good reversal, because we're in a pretty strong downtrend now. So, but we got this little channel working up. You get a break, a new high. This actually breaks higher. This one's a little bit risky, because this is where prices are likely wanting to go, but it could be a really strong market, and we could push lower again. So you might take that one because this is played out. You got a break and a new high in place. So there's some reasons to consider that, but I'd probably skip that trade. And you see, it would have been an easy scalp, but you see we bounce again and come back because prices are trying to come back to that trend line. And unfortunately, we just start working sideways here again. And once again, you just don't get a really good safe setup to go short until you get a lower high here, but too bullish, and then you get your failed second entry long, which again, this is a little bit questionable because we're not back to the EMA, but it's such a strong downtrend, and we're back inside that trend channel, and this is at the very high of it, and prices just probably are not going to get back to the EMA. So I like that trade. Generally, I would tell you to skip a failed second entry failure like that. I mean, that's a second entry long that fails. So it's a failed second entry long that turns into a short entry. And this actually broke higher first and then turned down and went out the other side. It's one of those engulfing bars. And that would be a good place to take an engulfing bar because you're expecting prices to come try to make a new low. And this thing is just off to the races. So if you catch this trade, you've got a pretty nice trade. There's one more pull back here, but I wouldn't enter any more of these till we finally came back to what looks like a trend line right here. And there's a little hidden second entry, and that's a nice bearish bar. So you may take that one. We still got plenty of room down to this other side. The only thing is, though, we're just looking to make a new low, and we already have that in place because this is your break and your previous lows, right here. And you can see we've already met that. But this trend line is definitely in play, and this is a hidden second entry right off of it with a big bearish bar. So, and you got plenty of room on down here, so you may take that one. I don't think I would enter any further. If this was just a good bearish bar, maybe, but these are two inside bars. This is a decent signal bar here, and you still have a little room back here, and this one's still holding, but I just think it's too risky. Again, it's one you might mark it green because this is a relatively strong trend, but we already have that new low in place. This thing could reverse at any time. Of course, it could still go lower just like it did, but it could reverse at any point. And then we're running down here, and we actually get an overshoot here, and we start working sideways, and you get your first close. I marked this one green. I mean, you can see we made that high. We test it once. We come back, we test it twice. And that's the first, we got the first overshoot and the first break of this trend channel. But that's a pretty good move down, so we'll probably try to retest the lows, and that's what happens. We run on down. There's a lower high here, but you can't go short. It's one of those engulfing again. It breaks higher. So if you had enough room between the one tick below this bar and here, you might take that trade. But it looks really close to me. So, and I just don't see anything else. Again, you break higher here and you turn and go lower. But I'd wait on a lower high again. And that comes here, and you can see how congestive that is. Okay, I had a little interruption there. I think we were still talking about this trade. You may take this trade, but you can see how congestive that is. And there's a good chance it breaks lower and fails just like it did. And you can see it does make a lower high here, but it could have just as easily come back up here and made a higher high and then turned back down and stopped you out. So I just think that's really risky right there. The only reason I even consider making it green and being a little aggressive is because this is a strong sell-off. And that is the first break of this. This is a spiking channel, and that's the first break of it. And this is such a strong and long channel here that I'd almost consider it new and forget about the larger big one and just consider this a new and separate channel, because you see this started just after during the lunch hour. And here we are, at 1:30. So that's a long trend right there, over an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. So I would consider that a separate trend working down there and treat it like one. So we did get an overshoot here, but that would be the only reason I like that trade, just simply because that's a strong trend down. It's the first break, and there is a little trap to the upside. Notice that breakout made a higher high than anything else there. And generally, you're better off to wait on a lower high on a trade like this, which comes here, and it breaks higher and turns down. But by that time, you got to get short way down here, and I think this is a less risky trade than going short there. So, and that pretty much took you into the 2 o'clock hour. I just don't see anything else here that's really. I think you're better off to stay out of this. And you can see there's a lower high here coming off of all this stuff, but you're having to go short right into a little double bottom. This would be your signal bar here, not very good, and that takes you into 2 o'clock. So just not much left there. So even though it was a strong day, there just weren't a lot of really good trades. I mean, there's enough here. Don't get me wrong. There's plenty of trades here to do well, but there's not a lot of them. So the ones that you do have generally had some pretty good entries and a good chance at runners and so forth. And so you had enough here to have some good trades, but there's just not a lot of good easy trades today. We got a lot of this sideways stuff. You know, we move, we get, you're better off to stay out of that stuff because too much can go wrong in it. You know, prices just do not react normally out of a range, and that's why we have range rules that are totally different than trend rules because of how prices react out of a range. So keep that in mind. But I'm going to wrap it up. I hope you had a good trading day. We'll be back again tomorrow. Believe it or not, we're coming back. It's Thursday. We're wrapping up another week. I don't know where the time is going. I mean, it just seems like I come in on Monday. Of course, I was out a good bit yesterday, so that makes it feel like maybe a little quicker. I don't know, but it just seems like the weeks are just rolling by faster than ever. But anyway, we'll be back again to do it tomorrow and wrap up our week. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.